Hello, hello. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, Wendy. Nice to see you in our chat. Good morning, Tammy. Good morning, Suzanne. Pauline's with us. Pauline, I'm excited to have you with us for Business Evolution on Monday. It's going to be a great 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. Good morning, Elise. Lisa Maloney's here. Amberine's here. Good morning, Amberine. Welcome. Happy to have you. It's late there or early. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening if you are international. I am so excited about today. I know I say I'm excited about things all the time, but I am really excited to be launching this new program today. This was something that has been in the works for quite some time. And, when we fell into early 2020, we decided to start really focusing on lots of other types of things instead of this, because we felt that our community needed that engagement and interaction in a very specific and special way. So we wanted to make sure we were bringing all those other types of programs to you guys first, but it is time. We thought beginning of 2021, what better time to start a new program like this? I am Michael DeVellis, founder of the Powder Group, and I am here to welcome you to our very first of our new weekly series, the Powder Group Conversations. Now, this program is going to be 30 minutes or so. There's going to be chats with industry leaders and inspirational voices from throughout our industry, but also beyond our industry. As you guys know, we love to focus on what we call a 360-degree approach to development and personal and career for our member community, as well as the industry at large. So we're going to focus on things like career discussions, creativity, specific projects or productions that are interesting to our community, wellness, health and safety, you name it. Anything that affects our community and industry will be fair game for these discussions. We will not be announcing our schedule and program. Our schedule's announced. It's every Wednesday at noon Eastern. And it's going to be broadcast live for TPG Pro members exclusively on Zoom. What we'll do is every Sunday, we will announce who our guest speaker will be for the following Wednesday. So on Sunday, you'll learn who's going to be our speaker at noon on Wednesday the following. We will post that information on our Facebook group, as well as throughout the industry. We'll also send an email blast out, of course, to communicate that to our members. Once the live broadcast is wrapped up, the next day, Thursday, we will have that broadcast live, free for all, on our YouTube channel, which again, I bet you didn't know we have a YouTube channel. We're going to get that going in a bigger way. And also it's going to be on the Powder Group Facebook page. We're not going to post it in TPG Pro. We're going to put that on the Powder Group Facebook page. So if you don't get a chance to check it out live with us on the Wednesday morning, you're going to want to go to the Facebook page. In about 4 or 6 weeks, we're going to actually be launching the Powder Group podcast. So you'll find the audio from all of these programs on that podcast. So we're going to wait till we've got a bunch of them going. We've got some other programs we're going to put on there as well. But right now, we're going to hold off for probably until mid-February or so. Maybe we'll launch it on March 1st, my birthday, because that'd be kind of fun, right? That was not a plug for my birthday, March 1st. I'm so excited about who our first speaker guest is, because this person has been an integral part, such an important part of everything that the Powder Group has done over the last 17 years. I could not imagine any better way than to launch our program with our very own James Vincent. When James and I talked about this program, we spoke about different ideas and different topics and different things we could be discussing together. And we landed on one that both of us feel is very important for our community, but also for our own personal wellness and our own personal development. And I think as we go into 2021, this topic is incredibly important. So we're going to be talking today about authenticity. We have this James Vincent on authenticity. I'm going to remind you guys, video is off, but chat function is on. You are absolutely welcome to engage with each other, chat with each other, throw a question in there. Hopefully James or I will see it while we're talking, but feel free to engage with each other. Just do make sure that you're focusing on what's going on with James and I, because James is going to have some really important stuff to share with us. So I'm going to bring James on, and I'm so excited to have him. my buddy, my pal, Mr. James Vincent, or is it Ms. James Vincent? Let's see. Good morning.
How are you? Oh, can you not hear me?
I can hear you. Yep. Sorry. That was me, not you. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
I'm excellent. Good morning. You're looking sharp today.
Well, thanks. I actually washed my face.
The little things.
It's my new B3 beauty wand.
Oh, see? I might need to pick up one of those myself. I think Julia's with us. Maybe we'll figure that out. Good morning, James. I know you and I talked about this before, but I just want to say that as I said, there's no better way for us to be launching this than with a chat between you and I. We've been chatting at each other, chatting with each other, chatting about each other for the last 20 years or more. And I'm really
so good at talking over each other.
We're not going to do that. I'm going to be you're going to be so impressed. So we're going to get started because we're trying to keep these in short enough content that people can pop them on maybe as background noise, when we're listening to the podcast, of course, but even if they're going to our Facebook page or to our YouTube channel, we want this to be something people can pop in during lunch, pop in while they're kind of hanging out, helping their kids out with some work, but they have time to focus on themselves. So we're going to try to keep these sessions at 30 minutes. So I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to ask you a really, really important question. What does authenticity mean to you? How do you define it?
You know, for me, authenticity is my focus for 2021. And it really started at Evolution 2 years ago when I started doing work on the idea of not comparing. And it is something that resonates with me because we work in a very competitive industry. And as I found myself aging out of certain pieces of the industry, as I found myself unable to do certain parts of work in the industry, like letting go of editorial because I need to make more money than editorial provided. I really had to look at authenticity. And so authenticity for me is the quality of being genuine and real. It's also the idea of being legitimate and being true. And I think, you know, when I looked up the definition of authenticity from Merriam-Webster, it just says being authentic. And I think really what it comes down to in our idea of how we speak in the Powder Group, it really is about tapping into your true self and then amplifying that forward. And so for me, that's how I look at authenticity, especially in a creative career like makeup.
I love the idea of not comparing. It's so easy with social media. It's so easy, especially during the last, during the shutdown, the lockdown, the pandemic, for us to look and go, and you've had these conversations with artists, how are people working and I'm not working? Well, we have to pull back and understand what are our circumstances? What are the things that make us us? What are the things that make our circumstances unique to us? What do you feel are the benefits of being an authentic human? Now, forget the industry for a minute, but what are some of the benefits of being authentic as a person?
I think authenticity is essential for creativity. The idea of kind of tapping into the internal of creativity, but also opening yourself up to the external. Like, what are you truly inspired by, and who are you truly, and how do you share that? And I think that also leads into connection. What makes you special in your communications? What makes that thing that is something only you can provide, and separates you? I think also community. It's really essential that you're authentic to be a real part of a community, because if you are coming in with that kind of fake bravado, or you are inauthentic in what you're putting forward, I think that doesn't allow your community to trust you or to feel comfortable with you in the same way. And so I think authenticity is essential for yourself, but also for society, because we need to make sure that we are fully formed in who we are, and that allows us to connect to other people, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I think, what you see is what you get, right? A little bit of that. I think one of the things about, I think both you and I, is, for better or for worse, what you see is what you got. You
Yep.
know, Michael's going to be Michael. You know, James is going to be James. And I think that you used a word which was trust. And I think you can only create a level of trust when you have expectations that are constantly met. There's consistency in who someone is
Yep.
and how what someone brings to the table and how they bring it to the table, energetically, physically, all that stuff. But I think what you said about that is really important because I think it's very easy for us to try to put on a different energy or a different face, a different guise for different environments and different circumstances. And I think that we've both been in circumstances where we see someone, we go, that's off. And when
Yep.
it's off, it makes us start to stop to trust. And I think that's important. So let's move that ideology into specifically our industry.
Mm.
As a makeup artist, as a brand, because we've got lots of brands who join us for these programs as well. How does it differ from being an authentic person to be authentic as a part of the industry? Is there a difference?
I think there is and there isn't. I think when we're talking about the authenticity of the self, we're talking about the things that you're born with, the way that you're socialized, what family you come from, how you connect, the way you select kind of who you are in growing up. Like for me, growing up in a very small place with a very large family who was very Catholic, who was very liberal, it obviously influenced myself. I think with a brand, the self is such a part of it, but you have to think of it a little more outward facing, because with a brand you're developing for yourself with your own ideas and ideologies, but you also have to really look at how are you communicating with ourself. When we're talking about authenticity, a lot of time it's what am I projecting. With a brand, we have to think about also what are people receiving. And so I think that that happens with the self, but with the brand it maybe switches which is the primary function of the authentic communication.
Can there be a difference in how a person is authentic as a brand owner and how the brand comes across as authentic, or are they tied together?
I think they're tied together, but I think there is a difference because I think we know that there also has to be some code switching. We know that there also has to be some comfort in communication. I know that if I'm speaking to one group of students that maybe are early stage versus a group of advanced artists, I might use different language. I might use different stories. I might listen in a different way. And I think that that idea of situational leadership, that idea of situational communication doesn't take away from the authenticity. It is kind of like manners, like we know the etiquette that we were raised with, but we use different levels of etiquette depending on who we're with. You might be much more comfortable if you and I are having dinner than if you're having guests that have never been to your home. And I think that's how we are with authenticity. With my powder group family, there's a shorthand. I don't have to fill in the pieces of who I authentically am, and I can amplify things that other people might find a little crazy. But with this community, I'm very safe to be 100% authentic in a new meeting or representing a new brand, because I represent so many different brands. There might be pieces of myself that I pull back and other pieces that I push forward. So I don't think it's being inauthentic to think about how you're relating to other people, especially in an industry that is commerce driven, like makeup artistry. It really is about finding the balance of being your true authentic self and being able to bring that and pull that into a brand. And I think that there are so many successful examples of brands that are truly authentic, especially in the powder group kind of sponsorship lineup.
I think really in a way you're saying no matter what environment you're in, while we have to adjust slightly, James Vincent is always James Vincent.
Yeah, and I think that when I am the least successful is when I am not able to be James Vincent. I think when the ego gets in the way, a lot of times that can stop us from being authentic. A lot of my biggest pieces of my career and successes are decades behind me at this point. Do I continue to talk about things that I've done, or am I authentically so who I am at 47 years old that I can talk now about who I am and what I want to do, and I think that it doesn't erase the way that I've communicated in the past. It's just something that we build on. And I think what we're seeing now in America is marketing, branding, all of those things have to be authentic because they can be so easily exposed. I think Black Lives Matter was a great example. We saw so many brands jump on that bandwagon, talk about amplification, do all of these things, but it was just talk. And now we're seeing the fallout where people are saying, well, where's the follow-up? Where are those things that you said to be true? Where there are other brands who for decades have said, this is our message and this is the way we work. And we trust authenticity. We might respond to something energetically, or we might respond to a message from a brand or from a person. But as soon as we start to see something that's inauthentic, we feel it in our gut. And I think that in this industry, because it is such an intimate industry, the responses happen very quickly.
I also think there are so many choices. You're not forced to choose to work with a client or work with a colleague or work with a brand that you don't believe and that you don't believe in, and that you don't feel is authentic. We're very lucky, both of us. I mean, I've been very fortunate that I'm been given the platform prior to the Powder Group, but now as the Powder Group for 17 years, to be able to provide a spotlight on incredible artists and great brands. And one of the things that you and I both know we look for at the Powder Group is that they're authentic, that they're truth, that there is a truth and energy to them, that they care authentically. And that they're not just putting on a guise. We've said no. I've said no to brands who wanted to work with the Powder Group because I felt like it was just to check a box. And that's not fair to our community. So let me ask you a question. You said before, James Vincent should always be James Vincent. Can you tell me, how would you describe what makes you authentically James Vincent? What are some characteristics?
I think that, if I look at my makeup artistry first, because that's probably the thing that is the most outward facing that I talk about the most. I think that my style has had a very kind of, always say uptown glamour with a downtown edge. There has been a very New York element to my makeup artistry from the very beginning. There is a minimalism, there is an energy that has always been part of my makeup. And so when you see that makeup, it feels very much like me, even though I can mimic a million other styles. And I think that kind of continues in who I am as a person. My aesthetic, if you come into my home, if you have done Fashion Week with me, if you look at any of the stories that I art direct, that carries through in my aesthetic very authentically. There is a bit of rock and roll. I think there's always something referential. I think that I tend to pull from histories. I think I'm very much about the audience. I really feel very responsible for connecting to an audience, whether it's visual or whether it's standing on a stage at the Artist Summit. And I think that is very reflective in who we are as the Powder Group and who I've become. And a lot of who I am has developed because of the Powder Group. Having a platform, there's a responsibility to it. And so I think that maybe more than other people in the industry, I always have to step back and say, is this real information? Am I being honest in how I'm putting it forward? Am I presenting it in a way that it connects to multiple people? Is it inclusive? And I think because I've been doing this now with the Powder Group for 18 years, that has very much formed who I've become as an adult man. I think also my background is social work. I have always kind of fought for inclusivity and fought for the underdog. And I think that's very apparent in who I am. And I think there's a spiritual edge to who I am. And I think that that's always been there. I have owned a line of candles for 2.5 years, but if you've been with me on set for 25 years, there's sage, there's candles, there's, these pieces have always been such a part of who I am and what I do, that they are authentically me. And I think that it's kind of like those layers, like you talk about layers a lot in your presentations, but it's very true. Like those layers add to our authenticity. I think that in an industry that's very surface, not so many people look at the layers. But at the Powder Group, what we always talk about is how are you bringing your own story forward, and how are you sharing those different layers of yourself that allow you to build a career and a makeup style that is truly authentic and truly yours.
How do you, so that I couldn't agree more with everything you said about yourself. You just put yourself in this box that we all know that's James Vincent. And I think that knowing you for as long as I have, I will say that the consistency of those characteristics is what makes you James Vincent now. And I think you're absolutely right about everything. But you mentioned before that you work with a lot of brands and you have to sometimes take on other energies and personalities. Two questions here. One, do you ever feel uncomfortable taking a project or a job because you feel like you can't be your authentic self? And number two, when you're working, you've got your own brand, Rebels and Outlaws. You work on behalf of the Powder Group. You're my partner in so many projects we do. You work with the Makeup Show. You've written for Beautylish. You have to take on different personalities and energies while still maintaining yourself. So number one, do you ever just turn something down because it doesn't suit your authenticity? And number two, how do you ensure that when you take a project that they understand that what they're getting is James Vincent?
Uh, I turn down a lot of projects. I probably give away more work than I take at this point in my career. But it isn't always easy. I think that I have really had to do the work to get to the point where I can push my ego aside and say, this is not the job for me, because I can't deliver, but here's an artist that can. I find it very difficult to shrink myself at this point into places that I don't feel like there's space for me. And I will not, at this point in my career, work with people who don't share my ideals or ideologies. And sometimes it's as stupid as, everybody knows the story at this point. The reason Rebels and Outlaws came about was because I was offered a big position with a company that I had done a project for, and a huge salary and a title. And honestly, I went to Elevation with the Powder Group, and that week changed my life because I realized putting on a suit for someone else, speaking with someone else's tongue, maybe saying things that I didn't think to be true, or marketing off of people's vulnerabilities, it's just was not me. And so I made a very different decision. And I think that a lot of that comes with maturity, and a lot of that comes with developing your own authenticity. John Hennessy, who was one of my first makeup teachers and is one of my best friends, says it all the time, like, in this industry, you can be unique or you can be exceptional. And what I always add to that is you can be authentically unique or you can be authentically exceptional. And I think that there are a lot of people that have a talent. Anybody can line an eye. But how are you delivering something that feels very special? I think you have to, or I have to, be able to connect at a certain level. And so for me, I don't feel like if I can't give 100%, I don't want to connect myself to a project. And so if I don't feel like I can be authentically me with someone, I think they deserve someone who can give 100%. But I have a privilege in my career right now where I can turn down things that I don't want to do. I have had times in my career where I have had to take jobs that I didn't want to take, or work with clients that I didn't want to work with. And so I think that it's also important that you understand that there are going to be those opportunities or those things that you have got to do to move forward where maybe you are not being 100% yourself, but that doesn't mean you're being inauthentic. It means that you're recognizing how you are working with these people. So I want to be very clear. with that. I think that it's important that we recognize in a creative industry that it isn't always about me, it's about my client. And so I think if it's something that you can bring your heart into and your passion into, then you're still being authentic, even if you're not speaking, all of the things that you want to speak. I don't know if I'm being clear with
Makes
that.
perfect sense, actually. And I think that Christina Viet had actually mentioned, it's the conflict sometimes of being true to yourself and your artistry or paying bills. And I
Yeah.
think that paying bills is good.
Yeah.
Paying bills is okay. And on both of our behalf, I hope you don't mind me saying this, I think we've both, we've turned down things in the last 10 months
Yeah.
because they didn't suit who we were and what our authenticity is. And that's not because we have money. That's because it's more important to us to be true, and for the long term, for the long haul, for us to be visibly and consistently what we are and who we are. And I think that's where authenticity comes. So let me ask you this, because I think we want to avoid, you're saying, working maybe with brands or people who are inauthentic. Can you share what are some things we should look for? What are some red flags of inauthenticity? What are some things that you would say, if this is an energy you're getting or something physically you're seeing happening, this might be someone or something that is inauthentic?
I think any brand that is, or any client who is not willing to listen to what you're bringing to the table. I have always, in my experience, any client who questions your rate is immediately going to be trouble in so many ways. The people who want to pay you less than you're worth are always the most difficult to work with. I think people who have messages that you don't agree with. I had a brand reach out to me to do some work with that you and I have had a relationship with, and I really felt like the way that they have treated people in the last few years is not anything that I want to align myself with. And I'm not as vocal about that because I also represent the powder group and the makeup show many times. And so sometimes I have to hold my tongue. It doesn't mean that I'm inauthentic, but I would say if you see the way that brands are treating other people, that's a uh, really great example of how they're going to treat you. And I think that you can also look at the brand or the client and see what messages they put forward. If brands are not uh, putting things forward that are important to me, like diversity, like inclusion, like representation, then I know that that's not a brand that I can align myself with. And I think you have to put your checklist together and say, what is important to me in this instance? And like I said, there have definitely been jobs where I've had to take the job for the paycheck. And so then it may be something that I just do behind the scenes and I don't necessarily share it, or I don't necessarily put it forward. There is no shame in the hustle. I understand that, especially right now, people are doing jobs that they might not necessarily consider.
You mentioned brands. Can you share, if you're comfortable with it, can you share some examples, whether within our industry or outside of our industry, of brands that you feel exhibit exceptional authenticity?
Yeah, I think B3, it's no secret that I do a lot with B3. Julia Dalton Brush is authentically Julia. I think that the product that she develops come from experience and understanding what the camera needs and what the client needs. And she is involved in her communities and very vocal about her involvement. So I think that that is a company that I feel very comfortable not only connecting myself to, but I use the products myself and feel very comfortable recommending them. Senna Cosmetics, I think, is one of those companies. I think Eugenia is such a strong, important voice in our industry and has been for so long. And she's so consistent in the way she educates, in the product that she puts forward, but she doesn't need to shout it out or claim what's hers. And I think that that also says a lot sometimes for authenticity. When you are the innovator in an industry that so often knocks off other people's ideas, I think that, my tendency with my ego would be to be like, I did this first. And Eugenia doesn't need to do that. She's so comfortable and confident in what she puts forward. I think Scandinavia is another brand that I constantly speak about. I think that Alan and Deb are great examples of that idea of putting an authentic brand together with authentic people, and their commitment to our industry um, is really strong. There are a lot. I mean, most of the brands that I work, Danessa Myricks, I think is another brand. It developed out of her understanding of not only the camera and the client, but her own personal needs. And I think when you share those pieces of yourself in your brand, Danessa is a very private person. We don't necessarily know her stories the way you know my stories, but you can see in what she puts forward with her product those pieces of her, which I think are so authentic.
I think
Yeah, there's so many.
I
There's so
think it's
many.
hard too when you mentioned Eugenia and Senna Cosmetics. A family-owned business that's been in business for decades. I think of Cinema Secrets. I think of, from Maurice to Michael to John
Yeah,
and Jessica to have to authentically care and show that you care is also really critical. I think that, in the age of social media and the age of comparison, as we talked about earlier, it's very easy to want to just, I'll use the word show off all the time, talk about how amazing you are, talk about how great you are, talk about all the great things you do. But I think also if you're authentically who you are, you're also sharing wonderful, wonderful things about other people that are a part of your world and your community. If you say you care and you're showing that you care, then that also has to do with authenticity. I think social media is a thing, and we have a few more minutes, but within social media, are there things that people can do to make sure that they're exhibiting authenticity or showing who they are so that way they can maintain that authenticity?
yeah. I actually put together a little 5 point, because I love my 5 points. But I think with social media, especially, but with any of your marketing materials, any of any of the things that you're putting forward, and the things that you're pulling in for yourself, drop the need to conform. Do not always feel like you need to be like everybody else. Be mindful of your thoughts, your words, your actions, and say, am I speaking, am I saying, am I writing what is true to me? And I think if you measure that with social media, instead of the amount of likes that you get, you take away that weight of always needing other people's validation in your social media. Number two, be mindful in your self-talk. This is a huge one for me. What are the thoughts, the words, and the actions in yourself? Are you giving yourself gratitude? Are you recognizing your successes? Are you looking at your purpose with positivity? That is huge. And you can tie that into your social media as well. Am I comparing my number of likes to my best friends? That happens to me a lot of the time, because brands will look and say, oh, he only has this amount of followers. And so I have to be aware, and then I have to make the decision and say, no, my messaging needs to be very clearly me, not the amount of likes that I get. Number three, be part of your community. If you are authentic and you're not sharing it with anybody or showing that authenticity to people, they don't know who you are. So you need to put that forward, and your community will be the people who are the most accepting, because they want to learn about you and get to know you. Number four, keep working and learning. Travel, study, cross study, experiences. The reason our country is in the place that it's in right now is most Americans don't leave the place they grew up in. When you meet people from other cultures and backgrounds and speaking other languages and eating other people's food, it immediately opens you up to realizing your own stories and your own authentic self. And the last one, stand up and shout out. If sometimes we find it easier to stand up for other people and to be authentic for other people, we know what bothers us. So we don't like bullying, right? So we know that, okay, if I can stand up for another artist and protect their authentic self, I need to be able to do that for myself as well. So it's another example of looking at being authentic for society or community will definitely impact how you are perceived authentically.
It's an amazing way to wrap our time together. But I want to say one more thing. I think that what you've just said, and especially reading some of the comments in chat, I think that it's not one of our discussion points, but I think it becomes easier to be if you're being authentic.
Yeah.
It's not as much work to try everything you just said, like stand up, shout out for what you believe in, be a part of your community, authentically who you are, because a community is a puzzle.
Yeah.
Every puzzle piece is shaped and differently and has a different pattern on it. But when you put that puzzle together with each authentic puzzle piece, the puzzle is whole. And I think that's the piece that we sometimes look at. And we think, well, I'm not doing the work that James is doing. I don't have, like you said, the number of followers that this person has or the number of likes. Why didn't anyone comment on that post? Was that not good enough? Like, are you using your voice for attention, or are you using your voice to show who you are? And I think that's incredibly important. And I do want to wrap at that point that everything you've said today, James, and everything we've talked about really boils down to that. Number one, it's easier to be authentic than not be. It's less work. It's less effort. It's less stress.
Of course, you don't have to remember what you've lied about. You don't have to remember, what you've told one person or this person. You don't have to work to fit into someone else's, space. You are just yourself. And I think that there's like a breath that is allowed when you're just yourself,
Yeah. Well, number one, we did it. We did 30 minutes. I'm really proud of us.
I'm kind of shocked.
Considering how much we talk. Grateful beyond gratitude for you being our very first guest for the Powder Group Conversations. I am Michael DeVellis. This is the Powder Group Conversations. Thank you for joining us. Next Sunday, I will be announcing who will be joining us next Wednesday. I hope you'll be with us. And if you are watching us in rewatch on YouTube, on our podcast, or on our Facebook page, please be sure to follow the Powder Group at the Powder Group, me at Michael DeVellis, on Makeup Magazine at On Makeup Magazine. And James, your social?
At J Vincent Makeup and at Rebels and Outlaws. And for all of you TPG that message me, I do have the January Witch Box going up again today. And this is the new Chakra January candle. So we sold out, but they're back up today. Yay.
Yay.
I love you guys. Michael, I love you. Thank you for.
Love you guys. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.